Good morning. Welcome to Conversations with Carla, brought to you by the People Institute. Good morning. I'm Carla Harris, and this is Conversations with Carla. Today, we decided to take a little bit of a twist with our show, and for the first time, I am being interviewed on Conversations with Carla by breakthrough coach Karen Pfeffer. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning, Carla. Great to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, Carla, you and I have known each other for over 20 years, and we have been talking about next moves and next steps with everything that's going on in the environment. And I said, it's a good time for you to share your story, Carla, because I didn't even know your full story. And when we started talking, I thought, wow, that's a powerful story. And you agreed, and here we are today. And I'm interested because you posted on social media this wonderful post here of you talking about courage, right? And this is a quote that you gave on Brene Brown. Courage is contagious. Every time we choose courage, we make everyone around us a little better and the world a little braver, right? So this is a time for you to take that courage, a time of courage of coming from behind the image and sharing your story. So it's time to shed that image and share what's underneath that mask. So we all have masks. So what is your mask? And what is that you would like to share?
It's really interesting because my mask has always been my image. I do image very, very well. I have been in some way, shape, or form. I've been in the fashion and image business all of my life. I mean, I actually was back in the 70s. I went to the Sears Charm School in Washington, D.C. Because my mother always, she had a way of helping us promote what was important to us.
Uh-huh.
And fashion was always important to me.
Right.
And so it really became a way of life. My business has always been around the development of people. And it's always been easier to hide. And I use that word hesitantly.
Right.
Because you don't think you're really hiding.
Right.
You just begin putting out a brand. So my image became my brand. And it was, I always know how to dress the part. I always know what to say. Because I was taught those things. So for me, when you and I started talking, it was like, oh my gosh, of course there's a testimony here.
Mm-hmm.
And it is one that will help people, because I believe that when we go through trials, it's
Mm-hmm.
so that we can, one, give glory to God, and two, be able to help others see that they're not in this road or on this road alone.
Mm-hmm. So this is why you're choosing today to remove your mask, right?
Yes. Yes. So you and I talked probably about a month ago, I think, because this has been in the works for a little while. And this year, 2020, was really like a culminating experience.
Mm-hmm.
January 27th, 2020, something happened with my company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I felt like it was the last knockdown that I could deal with. And, so I fasted for about 35 days, me and my conversations with God. And I don't usually have just conversations with God. It's usually me arguing and him listening. And I just knew, even though I had had other professional separations, this one hit me really, really hard. And I decided that I had to simply stop and say, okay, what is it that you want me to do? How do you want me to do this?
Mhm.
And it has been coming a long time to share my story. And you were the person that, a few months later, after that epiphany, that, he chose you to say, it's time. And here we are today. So, yes, today is the day.
So you talked about getting knocked down. So what are some of the obstacles? And by the way, this is interactive. Anybody who has any questions and things that you've been going through, feel free to put them in the chat here, and I'll be happy to address your questions for Carla. So Carla, share some of the things that some of the obstacles that you had to overcome. How did you overcome them, and how did you keep moving forward? How did you get that resiliency to keep moving forward?
So, I think I learned about bouncing back.
I know you're having a breakthrough. This is great. And this is great for people to see the vulnerability, because we teach what we learn. And you're in the people business. It's the name of your
Yes, yes,
company, the
yes.
People Institute.
So I think I learned my first lesson about bouncing back from my mother.
Mm.
And I was born, I sort of say the doctors messed me up when I was born.
Mhm.
And I have a disability that 90% of the people will never see unless I tell them. Probably more than that.
Mhm.
My tailors know that my left arm is 4 inches shorter than my right. And my mother did not raise me to think about it as a disability. So for me, that was the first part of overcoming, of learning to not look at life as an obstacle,
Mhm.
or if it is, how do you overcome it? And I think that for me, that's been the beginning. And then as I grew up and became an adult and became a business owner and just maturing in my own way, there have been a gazillion obstacles. I mean, I've my house has been in foreclosure. I've had a car repossessed. I have, had two failed marriages,
Mhm.
and it's really just learning to have faith.
Mhm.
My faith is really, really strong.
Mhm.
Um, there is nothing in the world that I would have been able to overcome without trusting, first of all. That's number one. And then just learning, my mother used to say, don't be afraid unless I'm afraid.
Mhm.
And I don't always agree with that. As a mom now, I don't always agree with that, because I think that we do have to show our fears, and we do have to show when we are shaking in our boots. But
Uh-huh.
it's how you move beyond the shaking.
Yeah.
You have to sort of take those moments and just woosah, so that you're able to say, okay, I'm not going to make an emotional decision. And I have made some emotional decisions
Uh-huh.
that have not been the greatest. In
Uh-huh.
fact, most emotional decisions are not great.
Okay.
I think that when we don't step outside of ourselves for even a moment to assess as objectively as we can and get outside counsel, whether it's formal or informal, we're destined to make decisions that can have catastrophic results.
So which emotional decision did you make that gave you those catastrophic results that you were able to overcome?
Uh, well, I would say leaving Florida. That's the main one when I think about that. So I moved to Florida from Washington D.C. in
And that's
1990.
where you're from originally, right? Born and raised in
Yes,
Washington?
born and raised in D.C.
Okay.
I moved to Florida, and for about almost 14 years,
Mhm.
there were some ups and downs, but for the bulk of those years, I did quite well. My business was thriving.
Mhm.
I had gone through a divorce, but it wasn't, there were no children involved. So it was a pretty clean break.
And if I recall, you came to Florida with your boyfriend at the time, who then
Yes,
became your husband,
yes,
and you started your business with him initially, correct?
that's correct. So
Okay.
I came to Florida and with who would become my first husband.
Mm-hmm.
And we started the business. We started Heaven Sent together.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually lost his job.
Mm.
And when he lost, which is what brought him to Florida, when he lost his job, it took him 4 years to recover.
Mm-hmm.
And in that 4 years, um, I was, I didn't understand non-violent domestic violence.
Mm.
And a very, very good friend of mine sent me an email in October, which is Domestic Violence Month, about non-violent domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
And if there were 10 things on that list, I could check off 9 of them.
Wow.
And I didn't know because I didn't come from an abusive household. My parents were not controlling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the youngest of 5 children.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all very supported by our family, by our parents.
Mm-hmm.
We're all very different people when line us up. We're all 5 different careers.
Mm-hmm.
We all look alike, but we're all 5 different individuals. And so that was new to me. That was new to me. And my friend, my same friend, who I love dearly, we've been friends for over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Once I moved out of that space, she said to me, one second.
This is powerful. This is powerful. This is where the teachings come in. And thank you for being vulnerable, Carla.
She said to me that he drained all the color out of your life.
Wow.
And it was such an appropriate description because I'm such a colorful person. I mean, fashion is my life. I love life. And for a friend who is my sister, a sister friend, to say that to me, one, I could not imagine watching a friend go through that. So I would imagine that for her, it was quite difficult. And then to have that describe me was just like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So once I got out of the house and we were divorced, I took some time. I worked on myself. I grew my business. I became a really entrenched in the business community in South Florida and Miami-Dade in particular. I chaired a chamber. I sat on other boards, and I was really able to grow. So I think that was what I think is a small mountain, right? So that might have been I don't know. I don't know mountains, so whatever a small mountain is. And then I went. I remarried. I got married again, and the mountain was bigger. It was much bigger. It had different consequences.
And how much time in between the first marriage and the second marriage, Carla?
Oh boy, probably 6 years.
Okay.
5 years, 6 years.
You remarried in Florida again?
Say again?
You remarried in Florida?
I did. I remarried in Florida, but the person I married was from DC.
Okay. Because I actually met you in between that interim, in between the husbands. When you were in your successful business, you were an image consultant. I actually hired you, and I had no idea about your arms. And you say that your mother raised you so that you were not disabled. So I remember being in a dressing room with you, and all of a sudden, I always ask you, why do you always tuck your arm? And you're like, oh, because one arm is shorter than the other, right? And I had no idea. And so that's powerful. So you were able to overcome this small mountain with a first husband and start your business and go forward. And then you entered into another relationship, and you got married again, right? And then from that relationship, you ended up having a child. And I believe this is where the second mountain, which is a little bit bigger than the first one, showed up. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you share
So
about that?
I'm not a topography expert,
Mm-hmm.
but I will say if there are mountains that come together that are of varying heights
Yeah,
and they make a landscape,
yeah.
this was the landscape. This was the landscape. It was by far the greatest um, challenge, and the challenge lasted for so long. It lasted for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I remarried,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I became a mom, and
Mm-hmm.
I love my daughter just intensely. It's a love that I had never known,
Mm-hmm.
and um, again, image was very important to me. I had
Sure.
a very difficult pregnancy, and it was very difficult for me to put forth the image that I was accustomed to putting forth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had a beautiful office in downtown Miami, and my the partner that I had chosen wasn't the best partner for me,
Yeah.
and uh, it was devastating. It was devastating because I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be um, a great family unit,
Mm-hmm.
and it was not. And it was like a huge boulder
Yeah. Yeah.
rolling down the highest mountain. So with the velocity that it comes, I mean, with the speed, it just came. I mean, and when I decided to move from Florida to back to DC, it
Mm-hmm.
was because I was in a very troubling marriage.
Yeah.
I was now a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my parents died when I was 18 and 28,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I needed some support.
Yeah.
So what do? We make a decision and we say, okay, well, you go back home.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't realize is that my home was here. My home was here in South Florida. My daughter's godmothers were here. I had developed long lasting, full friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the only one missing was my 30-year friendship in DC. I mean, but she would come down all the time. And that was my first real emotional decision. And in
So,
fact, honestly, Karen, I think it was my only one because I did not want to repeat that grade again.
gotcha. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper.
Okay.
And I'm going to take a little excerpt from your book, Faith Works, which, by the way, those of you that are watching, get this book. It has great nuggets in it about workforce development and also nuggets about Carla and her journey as well. So I'm going to turn to a page and I want you to share a little bit more about what you share here in your writing. At the beginning of my workforce development career, I unexpectedly rocketed to success in Miami, Florida, only to plunge into a deep valley, lose money, family, and a home. I crashed and burned and wound up back home in DC, where I had to navigate the difficult season, which led me to needing public assistance. A lot of people don't know that about you, needing public assistance and using that EBT card, which is the electronic benefit transfer card that you once circulated to make a major point about resilience. So share a little bit more about that.
So my a lot of my career with my company has been as a contractor in workforce development.
Mhm.
And I sat on the board in South Florida, I sat on the board in DC, and um, it was really during a time when I was training,
Mhm.
and the candidates that I was working with kept saying, "Oh, no, 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 Miss Harris, you don't understand. You don't understand. You don't understand. You don't understand what it's like for us."
Mhm.
So I left the circle and I went into my office and I got my card, which I keep to this day. To this day, I have it because it reminds me of overcoming.
Mhm.
Um, and I showed it to them. And I showed them that, yes, I do understand. I was raised in Southeast Washington, D.C., which today it's very different from what it was when I was growing up
Mhm.
there. But it was one of the most economically depressed wards of the city. And I decided that when I went back to DC, I wanted to live there as an adult because when I grew up there, of course, and then when I went away to college, my mom had died when I was 18, right after I graduated high school.
Mhm.
And when I moved back to DC from college, my father had remarried and moved to Maryland. And I decided that I wanted to live in DC as an adult. And I did. And I moved to the second most economically depressed ward in the city, Ward
Mhm.
7.
Mhm.
And I decided that I wanted my candidates to know that, yes, what you see is the image. What you see, you see the office, you see the car, you see that my name is above the door, but
Mhm.
you don't understand how I got there.
Mhm.
And when I sat, it goes on in the book, when I had to sit across the table
Mhm.
from the woman who was processing my case,
Mhm.
it was devastating.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was humbling. It was, it was, I mean, there was nothing that could prepare me
Yeah.
for that exchange.
Right.
I mean, literally having this young lady look at me like, "What the hell are you doing here?
Mhm.
Why can't you go get a job? Why do you need this?" And a friend of mine who I actually met here in Florida when when I first moved back to DC and I was talking with her, she
Mhm.
said, "Carla, you invested in this. We've all invested in this. You're only drawing from your investment."
Mhm.
And that changed my perspective a
Mhm.
bit.
Mhm.
It really put it in a different context for me. And I was able to look at it differently. Was it like a snap where it made me look at it differently? No, but it made me think of it as a different perspective.
Mhm.
So then when I go back and I'm journaling and I'm praying, and I knew at this point when I reestablished myself as a business person and I revised the basic program, which is the
Mhm.
workforce development program,
Mhm.
I knew that I could use this as a different perspective in teaching.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. I used it, and it was that experience sitting across the desk from
Mhm.
that woman in 2007,
Yeah.
and that I was able to draw from that experience to teach and
Mhm.
enhance a program that's taught to marginalized people
Mhm.
about how to overcome. It's okay
Yeah.
to use it,
Yeah.
just don't stay there.
Yeah. Your testimony, I'm getting a lot of comments here, live comments, and I'll just share some of them. You're an inspiration to show what's possible. Thank you for sharing. What a testimony. Purpose in the struggle. It's just very powerful that you're sharing this, Carla.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
how did you go from feeling worthless to feeling worthy?
I don't know that I ever felt worth less.
Yeah.
I felt very doubtful
Okay.
about my decisions
Mm.
because I knew that I was a good decision maker. I mean,
Okay.
my company won, $1 million contracts.
Mhm, mhm.
How can I be making these stupid decisions
Yeah.
about my life? And
Mm.
now the decision making was different because I had a daughter. I had a mouth to feed. In the past, it was just me and my dog, and now, though, I had the responsibility of another life.
Mm.
So I had my self doubt was incredibly high.
Mm.
Um, my confidence was at all time low.
Right.
My, could I, in all trueness to
Mm.
myself and who I am,
Mhm,
when the time came for
mm,
me to put a suit on,
mhm,
it was very easy,
mhm,
very easy.
mhm.
And I think that's a double-edged sword.
Gotcha. So, what would you say when you were feeling that self doubt, and feeling the lowest of the lows? What was the one thing that changed your trajectory to get out of there, to overcome that obstacle?
God
God. So, talk
and
about
my
that a
faith,
little bit and your faith, and thus your book, Faith Works.
right? Um, so faith. I didn't grow up in the church.
Mm.
Um, I didn't really establish my relationship until an adult, and I learned. So just a really quick story. So
Mhm,
I went to when my mother. I was 14,
mhm.
and I went to modeling school. I went to Barbizon Modeling School in Chevy Chase, Maryland, DC,
Okay.
right outside of DC. And I went through all the stuff, and I graduated, and I went to go back to audition for the agency. And they said no. I
Mhm.
wasn't thin enough and I wasn't tall enough.
That old image, yes.
So I went home. I was boo-hooing in tears. I said to my mother, they said no. So she says, well, do you want to model or not? I said, yes. She said, well, then do it. So at 14, I was a ninth grader at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts in DC. And at 14, I produced my very first fashion show. And from that point, so that was my first foray into entrepreneurialism. Um, and I, um, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about faith, and now you move forward
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
model.
So I've always been a journal writer,
Uh-huh.
and I've always been a journal writer. So as an adult,
Uh-huh.
I decided that, I mean, I kept my journal writing up. And then when yes. So at 14, my group in DC was called Style Liners,
Okay.
right? Like headliners, Style Liners,
Got it.
capital S, capital L.
Okay.
And so I was going to name my company that, and as an homage to my mother.
Uh-huh.
So I was going to Bible study. This is after I had, accepted Jesus as my savior, and I was going to Bible study, and I was in prayer, and God said, change the name of the company.
Mm.
I said, you got to be kidding me. I'm not changing the name of the company. That's my honor to my mother. I'm not doing it.
Right.
So, this is what I mean. We have these battles.
Mhm.
So we kept going back and forth. And finally, he said, change the name to Heaven Sent. I said, what? Heaven Sent? So I did. 2 weeks after that, I had my first client, my first image consulting client. And the rest is history. I just went on, and so I always knew from that point forward that when I listen to God, when I follow his direction, I do really, really well. But then the A-type control freak in me comes out and says, oh, well, I don't want to deal with that. I just want to do it my way because I think my way is better.
Right.
And when I look back, I think my way is always the way that has gotten me in trouble.
Uh-huh.
But as a human, we make those mistakes, and we can't. I learned not to beat myself up about the mistakes.
Gotcha.
So now I don't. I still argue, honestly, but
Uh-huh.
I don't really. I take longer in my decision making process.
Gotcha.
And I think the older I get, I'm 54, so the older I get, the less tolerance I have for BS.
Yeah. Which is evident.
Even my own BS.
Yeah. And which is evident, and that's why you're here today, sharing your story. Most definitely.
Right.
So you went through lots of obstacles in your life. You managed to pick yourself up, and with the support of those around you, which you share in your book as well, through faith and courage and the support of having people that know and love you and supporting you. That's really important. That's a golden nugget you have in your book as well. You were able to move back down to Florida. You got divorced. You have your daughter now, and you now have the People Institute, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
what nuggets, what things can you share? When you interview individuals, you always say, what are 3 things that you can share that people can take away? What would you say 3 things that you can share that people can take away?
My first, and I gave this some thought. So my first takeaway is whatever you believe in that's higher than yourself,
Mm-hmm.
have faith in that.
Mm-hmm.
But not just have faith, you have to live. Faith and love are action words, those are verbs, right? You have to live your faith, you have to live love.
Yeah.
I used to tell, when I would tell my ex-husband
Mm-hmm.
that, you can't love me the way you want me to be loved. You have to love me the way I need. That's my love language, right? So you have to live. God tells us how to have faith. He tells us what to do. People say, oh, we don't have a blueprint for life. Yes, we do. We do
Mm-hmm.
have it. And for me, that's where I turn. So I would encourage people, number one, to have faith and live your faith. Have hope. Don't give up hope,
Mm-hmm.
because faith and hope to me are synonymous.
And for people that don't believe in God, Carla, what would you say to them?
Have hope.
Okay.
Believe in yourself. Believe in your abilities to push forward.
Okay.
Because my dad used to say, you're only as old as you feel. And I think that in life, that's the same thing. You think what you are, or you are what you think.
Yeah.
And, whatever you say to yourself is true. I tell Nina that all the time. Whatever you say to yourself is true.
Right.
So if you say you're overpowered, you're powerful, you're strong, you can do it, then that's what you start believing, because
Mm-hmm.
you can. And if you say the opposite, then the opposite is true.
Yeah.
So while I believe, my faith is very near and dear to me, I don't, even in my teachings and my trainings, I don't walk away from it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't force people to believe what I believe. That's not my job.
Right. It's for people to have a faith in something high, a higher source,
Yes.
to believe
Yes.
in themselves, and to have hope and know that they can overcome obstacles. Having the
Yes.
courage to do that. And, we've all heard fear is either face everything and rise, or forget everything and run, right? So it's like facing and rising and knowing that fear is nothing more than false evidence appearing real. And you have faced your fear. So what are some other takeaways that you can give us, Paula?
So my second one is, it's okay to fail.
Okay.
You have to allow yourself permission
Mm-hmm.
to not be an expert at everything.
Yeah.
It's okay to fall down. The lesson, though, is not to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I teach about putting together personal boards of directors, right? And one of the seats that I believe every single person should have on their board is the shoulder to cry on.
Mm-hmm.
And the shoulder has to be a person that will allow you to express your failures, that
Mhm.
will allow you to have your pity party,
Mhm.
but for a moment.
Yeah.
That person also has to say, okay, it's time to get up and rise. It's
Mhm.
time to get up and move forward now.
Yeah.
Don't stay there. So it's okay to fail, but it's not okay to stay there.
Yeah. Yeah. As a breakthrough coach, and you'll see it over my shoulder here, I have a little plaque that says, there are no failures, there's only outcomes.
That's
So
right.
if you're not
And
getting the result,
lessons.
yes, it lessons. There are no failures. And oftentimes, in teaching, because we both do a lot of events, asking individuals who here likes to fail. Nobody likes to fail, but who likes to learn? So if you can learn from any experience, that's the lesson to take forward as you're sharing with us right now. It's
Absolutely.
about getting back
Absolutely.
up again. And what's the third takeaway then, Carla?
Don't make emotional decisions.
Aha.
Don't.
That's a
It's just
personal one. Yeah.
it's a personal one for me.
Uh,
It's a personal one that I share with my daughter.
mhm.
I do a lot of talking about emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
And now, and just to be really clear, emotional intelligence is not synonymous with emotional decisions.
Mm.
But don't make emotional decisions because you are not thinking clearly.
So if you're not making emotional decisions, what are you doing?
If you're not making emotional decisions, you are talking it out with people you trust.
Okay.
You are journaling about it.
Okay.
So if you're not a journal writer, make a list, pros and cons. Let's go back to the elementary ways of decision making. What are the pros if I make this? What's the long term effect? What are the cons? How do what's the impact going to be on the people that I love that are around me who
Mhm.
will be impacted by this? If
Mhm.
you're a parent or a partner, your decision making could very well have impact on them. So they should have the courtesy of and the respect to go to them and discuss it with them.
Mm.
And then once you do all of that, be confident in the decision that you're making.
Mm.
I tell people I'm not a fence sitter. I'm a do or don't. And I think part of that comes from not being able to crawl. So
Mm.
here I am, 54. I still can't crawl because
Mm.
I can't.
Mm.
And um, so metaphorically, I go from sitting on my butt to walking. I mean, just straight out going there. So the term crawl before you walk,
Yeah.
physically, I don't have a concept of it,
Right.
right? But of course, I understand.
Mhm.
And to me, that crawling part is the decision making part, is
Mhm.
the thinking, the praying, the meditating, the talking it over with people that that understand you and that you trust enough to give you the best advice that
Mm.
they can.
So I have an interesting question that's been posted. And the question is, can faith and doubt coexist?
Yes, absolutely. So it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's experiencing some setbacks right now,
Mhm.
and we talked about that. And she's like, I want to have faith, but I feel like I'm cheating God if I have doubt.
Mhm.
Well, so first of all, I'm not a theologian,
Mhm.
but I can tell you that there's lots of doubt in the Bible,
Mhm.
right? Of famous people and that we read about in the Bible. So yes, you can because we're human and
Mhm.
we have to allow ourselves to be human.
Mhm.
Faith is unseen, believing in the unseen. Doubt is when we see it and we see it ain't working, right? So it's hard to put the two of those things together. But when you look in your bank account and you see that the money is not there,
Yeah.
that's when the doubt comes in.
Yeah.
But then when you know that you have someone beyond your reach that you believe in and that you trust,
Yeah.
that's where the faith comes in.
Yeah. So from what you're saying, it's surrendering and trusting.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Any other nuggets you want to share with us?
Um, I just want people to allow themselves to be human,
Mm.
to not just recognize their own humanity, but to recognize the humanity in other people
Mm.
and to allow people the grace that they would want to be allowed. Um,
So, as CEO and founder of the People Institute, how are you going to take that very philosophy, allowing people to be human, moving forward?
so it is always in my trainings. It's
Mhm.
always. It's like it's like that golden thread that's always in our training programs.
Mm.
And the People Institute is about just that, developing people,
Mhm.
whether it's leadership or staff or whatever it is. It's
Mhm.
about allowing people to see the respect and perspective of others.
Mhm.
Specifically about, I mean, as it relates to vulnerability and courage and overcoming, we're actually putting the finishing touches on a program called I'm Only Human. And it is about just that. There's small group sessions, and it really is about helping each other
Mm.
say, I'm only human. Give me a
Oh,
break.
yeah.
I'm only human, not using it as an excuse,
Right.
right? But allowing ourselves some grace. We're the hardest people. And especially, talking to the women for a second, women are really hard on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're very hard on ourselves. We believe that we have to put this whole front on that we are super women.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, there is no glamour in being a super person,
Mm.
man or woman. There's no glamour,
Yeah.
you
So,
know?
Paul, what's the best way for individuals and companies and organizations to get in contact with you? Because what you share is so valuable and pertinent today for any organization. How do they reach you? Okay, great. So we have it here. So they can contact you at 754-218-5288 or send you an email.
Yep,
Um, and,
absolutely.
and your email says, is your image working, which is different than the People Institute. Can you just address that quickly?
So in 2018, my company so from 2010 to 2018, we were branded under ImageWorks Consulting Firm, and ImageWorks Training and Consulting. And in 2018, I rebranded as the People Institute because it was really all about the development of people,
Mhm.
whether we were doing workforce development training or corporate training. And quite frankly, internally, we don't call it workforce development. It's professional development training across the board. Um, so I decided after a lot of thought,
Mhm.
and I decided that it's really about the people.
Yeah.
And it's how we're developing people to be better team members, to be better parents, to be better at whatever it is that they want to be better
Mhm.
around. So that's why it still is your image working. And I always ask the question, is your image working? Because image is not just about what you wear.
Yeah.
The other day I did a training on the image of leadership.
Mhm.
And out of a 3-hour training, only about 8 minutes was dedicated to what you wear. The rest of it was who you are as a person, how you treat people, what's your level of influence, how you develop relationships. All of that contributes to the image of who you are.
Right. Right. And like a phoenix, you are rising. And you have you operate out of Florida and out of Washington currently, is that right?
We have, so our base is here in South Florida, and we have a small satellite office that's not, it's not even manned. It's a remote office in the DC area.
Okay, good. So
And
you're
we have trainers up there who manage our DC and Maryland contracts.
well, Carla, I have to tell you, it's such an honor to be here interviewing you. After
Thank you.
so many years, and you've helped me with my brand and my image as well. And I thank you personally for that. And how many people you're going to be helping through your story. The fact that you had to get assistance and you got through it, you overcame those obstacles, your faith, your courage. And I thank you for that. And for those of you who have not tuned in before, Carla has conversations with Carla every Monday at 10 o'clock, where typically she does interview an individual to share some more nuggets for us to continue living life boldly and moving forward with courage. So with that, Carla, I'll turn it over to you. And I thank you for this wonderful opportunity to connect with you and to share your story and your journey. Thank you for your courage.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. This has been such an incredible, even just prepping for it has been really, really incredible. So for those of you who joined us today, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions. If you want to get more information about what we do at the People Institute, you can shoot me an email. If you want more information about Karen and her breakthrough programs, Firepower Seminars, her contact information is on the screen. And I just want to publicly and personally, Karen, say thank you so much for this. I couldn't have chosen a better person. I didn't. I just heeded the call, and we both sort of listened to that voice. And I thank you so much for being a part of this journey. And I look forward to working with you many years to come. And for those of you watching, we will see you next week.
Carla, let me just share one last comment, and this will sum it all up. Thank you, Carla, for your vulnerability and honesty. You are amazing.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. See you for now.